Recording in progress. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our business development series. Our lunch and learn session today is on caregiver scheduling, specifically for Massachusetts, but if you're joining us from other states, we're happy to have you. Abby Sullivan and Rich Bruckleby are our presenters from Care Connect Mobile, and without further ado, I will let them take away. But just so you know, our lines are muted. If you do have a question or comment, you're welcome to unmute your line and put it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll probably go on. At the end, we'll take questions or comments. But if, as you think of them, you're welcome to put them in that chat, and Sean will be monitoring that chat box. Okay. So Abby, Rich, take her away.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us during your lunch break. This 30-minute session is meant to be an educational and informative one to talk about the hot topic of scheduling your caregivers and your nurses and therapists as well. And just doing a quick check, Leslie, you can see my screen, correct? Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's get started. We will kick it off. So I wanted to start by just introducing myself. As Leslie had mentioned, I'm Abby Sullivan. I'm an account executive over here at Care Connect. Rich, who is also on the line and co-hosting with me, Rich is also an account executive. We have both been in the home care and home health industry for a couple of years now, working with various different technology companies, whether it's for an EVV vendor or working with alliances throughout the country or other softwares. And so we are very familiar and close to having conversations with the agency administrators and coordinators, as well as owners, but then also the staff, the field staff as well. And just to set the stage here, I'll hand it off to Rich to go over what we hear from your peers and your staff. But again, if there's, to Sean's message earlier, if there's anything different or new or a point that we should be aware of, feel free to put it in the chat and Sean will monitor it and we can address that as well. So thanks again, everyone, for your 30 minutes. And Rich, I'll hand it off to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Abby. Like Abby mentioned, thank you all for joining. So what we are hearing right now is that agencies are struggling to attract the right caregivers. They're struggling to increase engagement and retention for their caregivers. Also looking to find the right tools to understand caregivers' preferred schedules.
Yep, absolutely, Rich. And I think it's always a chicken and the egg thing between, okay, here's the authorizations, here's the availability from our staff, here's what the client is looking for, and then you factor in things like location. How far is my caregiver willing to drive from their home or from the office? There's so many different nuances and factors. In what Rich and I try to do is just help not only the agency side, but the aging population essentially, excuse me, get the qualified folks in the field faster. Happy to share after I have a personal story. So we've had folks in my family come to the house to help with my parents. And so it's a personal mission as well here. I wanted to put up this slide because the reason that it's really important is because I feel like all of you guys, as well as your staff and us, will be super busy in the next decade or two as the baby boomer population ages. And this stat from the US Census Bureau talks about by the end of the decade that we're in now, you're looking at least a 20% clip increase of folks that will need some sort of home care, trying to keep them out of facilities, essentially. And so obviously it's apparent, right, that we're in a growing industry. But I think what it comes down to is the conversations that that we have is how do we, COVID kind of disrupted everything. Now that we're 5 years past COVID, it still seems to be a disruptive pattern as far as the workforce goes. So the question becomes, okay, how do we pivot from how we used to work to how do we pivot to how we should work with them now, especially since our aging population will increase. Um, Thinking about things, how do we reassess like our plan? How do we understand as far as how do we get our caregivers to work? How do we keep them working? How do we get them to first shift faster? And I think one of the biggest things and biggest disconnects that again that we hear, and would be curious to see if you want to put in the chat what you hear as well, if it's different, is how do we understand how our staff wants to work versus us just saying here are the hours. That's obviously so important for consistency and continuity, not only for your staff, but also for the client's sake as well there. As far as these are probably the top 6 challenges that we hear. Again, please feel free to put in the chat what you're hearing if it's different. Last minute call outs. I would say all of these bullets all have a trickle effect of, hey, if I'm calling out, nobody knows they're going to be sick in 2 days, right? Or their kid is going to be sick. So they call out an hour or two before the actual shift, and the coordinator is scrambling to find somebody who has the right discipline, location, skill set, all of that. And I'm not even talking about personality matching, right? We have heard everything from it takes, 7 days to onboard or 3 days to onboard, but it takes 30, 60, 90 days to get them to their first shift. And that seems to be a big area of why people are dropping before, during onboarding before they actually get to serve their clients there. Manual tasks, every piece of technology out there is aiming to help drive efficiencies, cut hours and costs there, including the home care industry and the technologies there. An interesting fact that I'm curious to see if anyone has an opinion on this, but around playing favorites, it doesn't seem to be an intentional thing by any means, but with the availability that caregivers give, the agencies, excuse me, it ends up being 3 or 4 or 5 folks who are consistently flexible and can take on more shifts last minute versus kind of spreading the love across the entire workforce equally or more balanced, I should say. And so that's something that I try to understand better from folks like yourself. Like, how do we combat that and correct that to help with retainment and engagement there? Non-compliant caregivers, I've heard stories of people not understanding. They're either fallen out of compliance or their training was only in English and they are fluent in Spanish. So it's how do we ensure that before they even go out to service clients, okay, are they fully capable and compliant and ready to work on behalf of you guys? And then the last thing is matching personalities. It seems to be an underlying pin or topic of conversation that everyone is trying to still figure out. Again, if you have other feedback, please feel free to include that in the chat here. I'm actually going to turn this over to Rich and talk about, so we can talk about like the impact and the results of retention, so keeping your employees, and then the satisfaction not only on the staff side, but the client side as well.
Yeah, thank you. So for the impact on retention and satisfaction, we are seeing that agencies going in and getting workers on shifts first are getting better results to have a higher retention with their caregivers. Instead of going in and backfilling last minute visits, shifts for those call offs, implementing the right tools to streamline that process allows your agency to grow into other areas, maybe different provider types. We're also seeing that agencies are leaving money on the table if they are missing visits or turning down shifts. And then you can improve satisfaction of shifts by picking out specific locations that match where a caregiver wants to work. When speaking with agencies in Massachusetts, maybe some in like a larger city, I'm hearing quite a bit that they have caregivers or a good pool of caregivers in the city. But if they accept a case, let's say 10 to 15 minutes outside of the area, they're having a hard time getting that filled. So now they know that they have to go and recruit in that specific area.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. And I think the bottom line here, and what we're starting to see a little bit of, I wouldn't necessarily call it a trend yet, but in other parts of the country, as we start to correct these challenges, um, as an industry as a whole, right? We're seeing not only are the caregivers, they don't want to be, for the most part, just employees, right? They want to be proud of the work that and they very well should be proud because it's very important work that they're doing. But let's help them, uh, with engagement and retainment. Let's help them become more of ambassadors in providing word of mouth referrals for other folks that might want to, work with them and be in this field, as well as referring clients too. It's as you guys know a big deal on where people are getting services from there. As far as looking and thinking about the relevance of scheduling and retention, everybody I think knows you have continuity of care, you have the right personality matching, you have a set schedule from the off. All of that is great. What's tricky from what we hear and would be curious to see what you guys think is if you have designated staff that is meant to be like a floater, or if you have staff that has a unique availability throughout the week that they can work, how are we able to accommodate them? And it goes back to my point of, okay, how do they want to work? What are the hours? Is there too much flexibility? Is there not enough? All of that is a fine balance there. And so booking new caregivers, right? Making sure that their onboarding is shortened so that they actually can go out in the field and spreading the shift across everybody and not just the handful of folks that are open to taking any shift at any single time there. And then another thing is um, like grouping together shifts. So for example, if I'm a caregiver and I'm spending the day in Boston, how do I max my time there versus if I'm going to Central Mass or, North Andover or something like that? How do we max out our time and get more hours there? Uh, the last slide here talks about just the overall long-term success. I think, from the Census Bureau stat about the 20% cliff of aging for the baby boomers, and how busy we all will be and how do we reassess our operational work to meet those needs from the staffing perspective as well as from the satisfaction for our clients. Obviously growing versus backfilling for staff, I'm sure is a goal for everybody, but also expanding the areas of service, expanding the services that you offer, building that strong reputation. These are all things that Rich and I hear constantly every day from folks like yourselves that are trying out different things and are trying to find something that sticks for their specific location there. So I will say this is supposed to be a short, just again, informative session. We do have another 15 minutes, so I would love to use the rest of the time, if that's okay with you guys, to just answer and address some of the questions in the chat and get your thoughts and feedback on what you're doing that's working or what is sticking out that you're prioritizing here. And let me go to the chat here. Yeah, feel free again to type it in, or if you can unmute, feel free to speak as well. And I do have I guess, here's our contact information. If you want to learn more about how Peer Connect corrects these issues, here's our information. You can get it from Leslie as well. I am on LinkedIn. But I guess as an icebreaker, out of everything that has been shared in the past 15 minutes, do people feel on the call, do people feel like there's, that what we have shared is correct, or are you hearing something completely different as far as, accommodating the staff that you have?
In our in-person meeting last month, they were talking about large block scheduling. One
Mhm.
of the owners, he doesn't receive patients who have under 40 hours a week of care needs. So his block is 40 hours a week of private pay. And that seemed like a really high bar for most of the other people in the room. They weren't sure that they would have enough clients if they made the bar that high. But I'm wondering, what do you folks use as your benchmark for what is, do you have minimum hours um, per week, per month, per quarter? Do you have a deposit that they spend up to, down to? How do you handle that?
This is Jasenia Guriel from Help Enhance Care.
Mhm.
What we do is we do 4-hour increment for shift. So that's kind of what we do. And one of the things I wanted just to point out is that what works for us is getting to know the caregiver, their availability. That's important to be able to staff them, so we don't get that many call outs, and give them always time during the week so they could have their personal time to book doctor's appointments and things like that. And consistency in the specific days that they always work on every single week instead of rotating those days. I think that's what has been successful for us, because they know every single week and month what days they will work.
Nice.
That's, excuse me, that's a great point. My follow-up question to you is, are you gathering that information at the front end of the onboarding process? On the back end, is it done by face-to-face conversation? Is it done digitally? And do you feel, and I guess a third question is, do you feel like you have room for improvement there as your caseload and your caregiver roster expands?
So we always have room for improvement. I think all of us, that's something that we always will have. That is something that I ask at first. I want to know if you're coming into my office, to my agency, I want to make sure that I understand what you could provide for my clients. And I want to make sure that I could do that for, I could book you a specific on those, that availability. Because if some people kind of things changes and they are very vocal and they'll let you know, but always reaching out to your staff and getting to know them, that's one of the things that I always tell my schedulers to do. I own the company, but I do have schedulers and administrators that actually assist me with that stuff, and it's important. I been in the field for a long time, so I know how this it fluctuates, especially through the years and the time. COVID was a very challenging time, so that's when we started to do that kind of one-on-one. And no matter how many caregivers you have on your books, on your timesheets, on a schedule, you have to make sure that you provide and you they get to know you and you get to know them, so you could provide the good service out there for your clients.
I think and thank you, Lusenia. That's it goes without saying, I should say, that it's super important. But something additionally that I have heard from several folks, more than I want to hear, it basically is, It's just unfortunate that these applicants that are coming in and interviewing, they will say, yes, I have a flexible schedule. I can work 30 hours any day, day or night. But when it comes down to it, when there are open shifts, nobody can. And I feel like that is kind of like a, a bottom line issue that again everyone is trying to figure out. So I didn't know, are people on the line experiencing that as well?
Yeah, we definitely hear from applicants that they've got great availability and they're comfortable driving certain geographic areas. And recently I literally handed this woman on a platter um exactly what she asked for. And she's like, "Oh, okay, great. Let me think about it." Ongoing exactly what you asked for. The town, the drive is like 8 minutes from your house to their house, the exact schedule you requested. So sometimes I think we're still experiencing that people are applying for jobs without really, it seems like some of them don't ever really intend to accept them. I don't know if anybody else sees that.
That's
It,
um, Hi, this is Salome from Lotusfield. We're fairly new, and yeah, we are experiencing the exact same thing. Like, we have so many people who apply, and you go over the details of the job, the locations, and where they would go. The requirement that yes, you do have to go from one client to another. And they say yes in the beginning, and then during the first week, they'll show up once, and then they don't show up again, if any. So yeah. The other question that I did have was, and this is also to Yesenia, with the hours that she had mentioned. So we do have both private pay and we have signed up with a few of the MCOs. Um, and now, especially with EVV, when you initially schedule a shift for like say 4 hours and the aide goes and finishes the work in like 2 or 3 hours, they don't get paid for the full 4 hours. So that's been another thing that we are seeing, or another feedback that we're getting is that, well, if I was scheduled to work 4 hours, I need to get paid for 4 hours. If not, then I'm gonna go somewhere else where they're gonna pay me for all the 4 hours. So how are people going around with that? Like, what's the workaround?
I could answer that to you. If you have a staff that is scheduled for 4 hours, they need to figure it out. And I tell this to my staff all the time. There's going to be downtime within your shift, but you need to figure it out how to spread that 4 hours. Because no matter what, it is a 4 hour shift in your company. It is within that 4 hours, 9 to 1, or whatever schedule, 8 to 12, that client is your responsibility. You have a contract with that client, and that's how I tell my staff. If you leave in 3, I still have that responsibility. That extra hour and something happens to your client, is my liability. So they have to stay there and figure it out. There's always like housekeeping they could do. There's always extra stuff they could do within at home. They could do is spread it for 4 hours. So this laundry, there's always something to do. And I know if it's if they're there 3 times a week or 4 times a week or whatever time it is, there's going to be even less stuff to do. But they have to. They could read to the clients. They could play games with clients. They could do any type of activities within that time. So that's kind of what I say to my staff. We are contract for those 4 hours, they have to stay.
Very good.
Thank you.
These are excellent points, and I love the back and forth between colleagues. This is real. I always felt this is where the real learning and growth takes place. I do want to revisit though, because we've had 3 people share, and I'm really grateful that people are stepping up and sharing here. Um, and maybe I'm missing this. Does the group feel like this front end work of developing a relationship with the caregiver and hopefully, as Karen pointed out, hopefully gaining a full understanding of what they expect and can do and want versus what the job opportunities are. Is that being done manually, or do you feel like you have the proper tools in place to help streamline or make that process as efficient as possible? Because you are all business owners and operators and probably part-time schedulers and probably part-time hiring managers and HR directors, which is a lot on your plates. So I'm wondering, is how are these tasks being accomplished?
I can go first since I'm
Yeah,
fairly new to the business.
please. Yeah, please
Um,
do.
yeah, so that's been one of the things that I've tried to tackle, and by saying we are new to the business, but we are 2 years in. This is going to be our third year, and I have found out that the things that work best for us, we try to maintain a relationship. One, during the interview process, we are very upfront about what the requirements are, what we expect from the caregivers, but also what the job entails. And I have found that for caregivers who have been in the home care industry, they tend to understand what the expectations are a little better than people who are fairly new to the industry. And so for those who are new to the industry, we do require a visit to the office. Like we try to bring people into the office at least once a month or every other month, just to check in, just to see how things are going. So we've made it a point that when you're coming into the office or when we're meeting one of us, it's not just for training or it's not just for like orientation or like there are all these things that you needed to do. But it's more time for us to check in with you to see how things are going. Are we meeting your expectations? Um, and for us right now, like I said, we text a lot with our caregivers just to check in and see how they're doing, but also like the phone calls to ask them to come into the office. We haven't automated that in any other way or capacity. So I am more than happy to hear what other people are using, and if it's working for them or not.
Yeah, I think thank you again for sharing. I think that there's a real opportunity there for you to capture some of the tools that are out there in the industry. We certainly have multiple tools that could help you greatly, especially as your business begins to expand. But I'm going to follow up with one more question. When you're in the initial hiring process, what do you think your attrition rate is on these applicants? Meaning, how many applicants do you feel like you have to go through to get to one that is quote unquote truly qualified? And then I'm going to have a follow up on that one and say to yourself, would it be effective for you to have applicants come to your organization fully credentialed and screened so that you understand that they are who they say they are and they are ready to work in your home care industry?
Our rate is horrible. I
Yeah.
am right in the middle of hiring right now, and I will tell you between this week from Tuesday to today, I have already reviewed at least 30 resumes. And out of those 30, maybe five are like, okay, I will go back to this person. It's bad.
I'm gonna shoot you one more question. Because these are the conversations that we're having almost on an hour by hour, day by day basis.
Yeah,
What do you think your estimated cost is to get one of those 30 applications?
it's a lot. I don't want to say it out loud.
That's fine. That's fine. Then let me throw something out to you. What what if somebody was able to come to you and say for around $500 per applicant, you would have a fully qualified person to have your initial interview with so that you didn't have to go through the process that you just explained to the group? Would that make sense for you?
Let me hear other people. Is that what is
Yeah.
that rate normal? Is that average? Is that low? Like what is
Yeah, please. Anybody wants to share, please
I
jump
think
in.
Bethany or Kathy, you guys have been doing this for a long time. Do you have thoughts on that process?
Sean, I think you hit the nail on the head. This should be on applications. I'm joking, but it would be great if we could. Hey, you are who you say you are. You fill out all this information and your hours, and you are who you say you are. Even, you spend the extra time to bring them into the office, do some bonding, team building, and all of this stuff, which is terrific. And I think that's the trend that people, should move forward with to help with attrition. But for the upfront, and Karen, you mentioned this, the upfront, I spend 3 hours with you during the interview process for a week and a half, and then you don't show up to the first shift, or you don't show up to the drug screening, or whatever the case is. It's how do we find the right caliber, of employee in the mix of all the noise. Essentially, it seems to, from what Rich and I hear, it's tough.
So we're just at about our half-hour mark. I don't want to cut the conversation short. If y'all are you want to keep going, we can stay on the line. I will encourage all of you to make sure you're taking a look at our other private care and clinical directors and HR meetings that we have quarterly online, as well as the in-person one next month in Woburn for newer agencies. We don't actually ask you how long you've been in business. If you want to learn from newer agencies, you're welcome to come. And there's refreshments and a cash bar. So that's the second Thursday of each month. Next month is in Woburn at the Hilton. Anyway, you guys will all get that in your update newsletter. Every Thursday we send those out. And in the handouts today, Abby and Sean and Rich's contact information is in there. So if you do have more questions or want to hear about more solutions for scheduling, they are excellent resources. Do you guys want to finish it up here, and then I'll go for lunch?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again so much for taking the 30 minutes. We wanted to keep it at a half an hour just because, it's tough staring at a computer and engaging for that long for anybody. And I'm looking forward. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email Rich and I. We're happy to answer them. If you're curious how Care Connect combats these scheduling challenges, feel free to reach out. Strictly to network as well, feel free to reach out. I'd love to put a face to a name and chat further.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Appreciate your time.